Here we are again, figuring it out. Topic for today, buying a penetration test. I wanted to call it trials and tribulations for buying a penetration test because I think that there's a lot of different things, both from the actual consumer, the business looking to do that, and then also from a vendor perspective, some of the things that we see and some of the confusion kind of in the industry. So here we are talking about buying a penetration test. Matt, I don't know if you have some initial thoughts that we can kind of start off with.
Yeah, I think, you know, uh, we see it a ton because I'm in the pre-sales game now. But even when I was doing all the work, you see different understandings of what is a penetration test. I think we see pretty regularly a client come to us saying, "I need a penetration test," and what do we always tell our team to ask? Why? What's the driver? Why are you here? Not because we want to upsell you or on something else. It's because there's that term penetration test that this industry has destroyed and repurposed in a number of different ways. And I think, you can cite like a NIST definition, 800, 115 on what a penetration test is. And that's a good kind of working definition. But my stupid dad joke is if you ask 10 vendors what a penetration test is, you get 11 different answers, right? Because that's just where we've ended up. So, what I think inspired us to do this is, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, but we're going to spend some time on, let's define a penetration test and let's get an understanding of what it is so that we can, help consumers of a pen test and general security services. Maybe we'll do other things, but let's arm some people on how to go about that. You might even have bought one in the past, and maybe this can give you insight. And look, we hope you work with BTB, but just work with someone good. That's always our ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sad reality is that there's a lot lower cost of entry for somebody to call themselves a penetration tester right now, right? You can get some tools and kind of do some of the automated or network-based things that you need to do in terms of a penetration test and kind of hang your shingle out and say, I'm a pen tester, give me $1,000 and I can do that stuff for you. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of vetting that goes back or beyond that. People are kind of price conscious and they may be just looking for the checking of the box, and that may work for them, but in reality, are they actually getting what they're paying for, even in that sense, right? Are people just running tools that they could run themselves? On the flip side of it, like you mentioned, you get a lot of people that just ask for a penetration test, and then when you ask that why, they're like, well, I heard it's like the best way to understand what you're doing in security. And I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody. They're like, yeah, I would love you guys to try to break into our company. And I'm like, have you done any security projects before? And the answer is no. I'm like, all right, well, that's like taking the final exam without going through the course, right? So let's start with a security assessment and try to figure out what controls you have in place and where you might be able to improve. And then once we have a better understanding of that and you've had some time to improve upon yourself, then we can do a penetration test. If you do it now, we're going to get in. Like there's not a very low likelihood that we're going to get in. It's going to happen, but it's still a conversation. And I think that term, people have become used to the term and they understand at a very high level what a penetration test is. It sounds sexy and it's been written into so much shit, right? People are like, oh, well, you need to be doing, as part of this framework or this industry-based standard, you need to be doing a penetration test. And it's like, people blindly do it. How often do we have conversations with clients that are like, I understand that, this specific regulation, and a perfect example is in the gaming industry where they're like, well, our jurisdiction says that we have to do a penetration test. It's like, you know what? It's great because you have to check that box, but you're not going to get any value out of it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an assessment. We can call it a penetration test. We can do some things around that to help you out, but this isn't the first thing that you should be doing. It's actually not helping you increase your security posture. And if your regulator or a vendor, whoever, a client has a problem with it, then come back and we'll have a conversation and justify why we did that versus a pen test, right? Yeah. So I don't know if you have thoughts on what makes up a good pen test. I know we have kind of our set methodology at BTB, but I don't know at a high level what you think kind of the ingredients are for a high level pen test or a good pen test to start with.
Yeah, and just to connect a couple things there, I think, some folks in the industry have kind of, and auditors included, right? Those regulators included, because they don't have that great understanding of what it is and should be. And when, what I always kind of say to clients is, a hammer isn't better than a screwdriver. It's just a different tool. So what are you trying to do? You're going to employ a hammer in some cases, sometimes a screwdriver, whatever. And a pen test is just a tool. And because of that kind of mixed understanding or confused understanding, however you want to phrase it, they expect the pen test regulators, sometimes customers, to do certain things that it cannot, right? And the tool isn't capable of doing it when employed the right way. That said, yeah, let's start to get a working definition here. To us, right? There's a couple of different flavors. There's external. It's about perspective drives it. Where are you starting? External, internal, wireless, device, IoT type things, application, mobile application. So it's perspective and target and focus. Because when you brought up the game example, we've both had a ton of conversations like that. Well, what's the scope? Do a pen test on what? The gaming app, the entire environment, that drives costing. And, to say a less experienced customer who's just looking at the reg, there's so much in that maybe one or two sentences from the regulator that needs clarification, and they're not kind of used to that, and they're not going to push back on the regulator just kind of naturally. They're going to go, hey, I'm told to do a pen test. Let's do a pen test. So, our job is to help share our expertise and understanding and help guide some of that so they can make the right call of what the scope is. And, I'm not saying push back on your regulators, but, that pen test, if you're not putting on that attacker hat and not mimicking an attacker using realistic techniques, if you're relying exclusively on automated tools, that kind of magic button, then it's not a pen test. There's automation in what we do at times, but that human element and that human applying a brain to the steps, like the workflow is simple, right? It's recon, passive active, and you can, all this is Googleable and people have different theories on it, but you're doing some kind of recon, you're doing some kind of, analysis of that recon, then you're poking at something, interaction with systems or applications, whatever, and then there's that feedback loop of what you see drives what you do next. If all you have open is SSH on a network pen test on your border firewall, I can tell you right now, there ain't much we're going to be able to do. Unless there's a 0 day or an O day, whatever the cool term is, but what are we going to do with that? But if you have a big attack surface that we can see, then yeah, we're going to be able to do some interesting things. So back to, how to think about it for a consumer is, what's your perspective or perspectives, and what's your target or targets? And then you can start to ask that vendor, well, how would you go about mobile testing? And, what's important to you, Mr. or Miss Client?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. It's an important piece of, kind of why we wanted to talk about this in this kind of figuring it out episode. It's just, making sure that you're asking the right questions of those people that could be doing pen tests. What's their methodology? Do they have references? And we get asked this stuff all the time. And I think I've done a couple different, articles about it, and probably even a white paper at some point, which was, what are the questions that you ask any security assessor? And I kind of throw us as BTB Security into the ring and say, if we can't answer these questions and we can't give you positive answers to this and help you out, then we're just as much at fault. But, I would like to think that we can answer those questions, which is, what's your methodology? What kind of tools or what kind of techniques do you rely upon? Who are the people doing this? Are they credentialed? And then, can I talk to references? I think the references is the biggest one there, right? If people don't have referenceable clients that they're able to send to you that give you a good sense that they know what the hell they're doing in any assessment work, then you shouldn't be doing work with them, right? And I understand it is tough to build up those references, but there are too many people right now. Like I said, the cost of entry for folks to kind of hang their shingle out and be a security person, even in an independent fashion or as a newer company, it's too easy just to amass a bunch of tools and say, yeah, I'm a security assessment person.
I mean, look,
and
exploit
we see it. Yeah.
People use, right? And there's others. There's Immunity Canvas or whatever.
Yeah.
Core Impact. Those have all been, I want maybe but like almost pen test in a box. And I think some people want that, right? Like trying to your point on the low end of the market, so to speak. A lot of people that are just trying to check that box, they're like, I don't care what you call it, I don't care what you do, and that's fine. It's just then you're informed in your way. Just share that with the vendor that, hey, I my budget is X. If it goes over X by $1, I'm out. And then we can make it a conversation about, well, what can we do to fit that mold? And you know, maybe we can be better. Maybe this isn't something we want to do because we can't take it on and do well at that. You know, go to Magic Pen Test and pay $300 and get a Nessus scan. That's cool. Like, that's not what we're gonna do though.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more of that because it's, you have these small, medium-sized businesses that are now being forced to comply with their larger clients, or because of the industry that they're in, you know, they need to comply with some of these same things as far as having pen tests or assessments. They're going to be looking for folks to service them, and we can help them out and give them general guidance and hopefully point them in the right way, and kind of give them a way to, you know, either self-assess or self-pen test and kind of do it that way. I mean, I know we've done that previously. People are looking for a vulnerability assessment, and then once we talk to them, they're really just looking for a scan. That's like, well, you can go buy the scanning tool for, you know, $1,200 and have it for the year and scan your brains out, or you can have us do it, and, you know, it makes a little bit more sense, and we can get deeper in it and actually talk about configurations and, you know, maybe strategies. So it's, you know, it's like anything else. It's like the DIY home projects, right? You can have a professional do it. It's going to cost you more. You're not paying for the materials and just to get the job done. You're paying for the 20 years of experience in doing it correctly and guiding you and making the right decisions. That's how I look at it.
And if we had to kind of capture that, we've said it, but to consolidate, you know, it's know what perspectives matter, know what targets / scope matter, talk about their experience, their references. And the other one I'll add there that I think is really critical is volume. If they're doing 5 pen tests a year, maybe they're awesome, maybe they're not. But all I know is when I had my knee rebuilt a couple of years ago, I went to a surgeon that does knees every Friday and only knees, and every Friday, and he does like 20 of them, you know, on that Friday. I'd rather go to the person that does this a ton of times. And the key there, and that's going to nudge people towards like a bigger four, and that's fine. There's tons of talent in those organizations, but be mindful that just because they're big and they quote do it, you got to understand the team that's doing it. Because if they have a bucket of 250 consultants, that's great, but are you getting the one that's done, you know, the one that does 20 a week, or the one that does one every 6 months and is just on that roster? So that's volume.
It's not an easy solution, right? There's no easy solution when it comes to this stuff. But I think, you know, kind of opening up the conversation with this is probably the right start. Maybe we'll have more conversations about this, quite honestly. Just because it is something important. Maybe we even have a conversation about pen testing versus red teaming, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot more persistence that goes on with that. And then there's the perception that one is better than the other. And
look, hopefully this helps. If anyone sees this, has feedback, comments, you know, reach out to us. We'd love to hear, was this helpful? We want to share. My intention with even broaching this subject is I want to share how we think, because I think being transparent is the way to build good relationships. And I think showing how we think and the things that matter to us, we can proactively share that knowledge, and you can then get to know us and know how we approach it, and hopefully you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to get a client's perspective on this. Maybe that'll be the next one, right? Yeah. We can do a figuring it out and let the client figure it out, or a prospective client or somebody that we know figure it out a little bit for us.
That could be good. All right. Well, I think we covered it today. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. As always, good conversation.
All right, take care.